June 11th, 1962, 2:30 in the morning. A guard walks the cell block of the most secure prison ever built in American history. He shines his flashlight into cell 138. Empty. He checks cell 140. Empty. Cell 142. Empty. Three men, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, had vanished from a prison that was supposed to be absolutely, completely, mathematically impossible to escape from. The FBI investigated for 17 years. They never found them. The case is technically still open to this day. And here's what nobody tells you. The government didn't just fail to find them. There are people inside the FBI who believe they know exactly what happened, and they buried it. This is the story they don't want you to know. Later in this video, I'm going to show you a letter that was allegedly sent to the San Francisco Police Department in 2013, 51 years after the escape, signed by one of the men who was never supposed to survive. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Alcatraz, the Rock, a small island sitting in the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay, 125 miles from shore, close enough to see the city lights, close enough to hear the music from New Year's Eve parties drifting across the water, far enough to destroy you. The water temperature hovers around 50 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. The currents are savage, unpredictable, brutal. The official position of the Bureau of Prisons was simple. Nobody could survive that swim. Nobody. And for most of its history, nobody did. Alcatraz wasn't just a prison. It was a message. It was the government saying, if you are here, you are gone. You are forgotten. You are beyond saving. And the men they sent there? They were not ordinary criminals. Al Capone, the most famous gangster in American history. Scarface, the man who ran Chicago like his personal kingdom. When they finally got him on tax evasion and sent him to Alcatraz in 1934, he thought his reputation would protect him. It didn't. On the Rock, Al Capone was nobody. Guards treated him like every other prisoner. Inmates mocked him. He tried to organize a prison band to feel important. By the time he left Alcatraz, his mind was deteriorating from syphilis, and the psychological torture of the place had broken something in him that never healed. The most powerful gangster in America, destroyed by a cold island in the bay. Then there was Robert Stroud, the Birdman of Alcatraz. He spent 54 years in federal prison, 42 of them in solitary confinement. At Alcatraz, they took everything. No birds, no books, no contact. Just a man and four walls for years at a time. Machine Gun Kelly, the man who made Tommy guns famous, who kidnapped an oil tycoon for ransom. By the time Alcatraz was done with him, he was a shadow, quiet, broken, doing whatever guards told him without a word. Mickey Cohen, Los Angeles mob boss. On Alcatraz, he got his head smashed in by another inmate with a pipe, nearly died on the floor of the laundry room. This is what The Rock did to the most powerful criminals in America. And then came Frank Morris. Frank Morris arrived at Alcatraz in 1960, IQ of 133, genius level. He had been a criminal since childhood, not because he was violent, but because he was smarter than almost everyone around him and had nothing legitimate to do with that intelligence. He had escaped from multiple prisons before. Every time they caught him, they sent him somewhere harder. Finally, they sent him to The Rock, assuming that even Frank Morris couldn't think his way out of this one. They were wrong. Morris spent months studying the island, the routines, the guards, the ventilation system, the cell walls. He discovered that the concrete around the ventilation shafts had been corroding for years from the salt air. It was soft, almost crumbling. He started digging with a spoon. He recruited two brothers, John and Clarence Anglin, who were in nearby cells. Together, over months, they dug through the walls. They made fake plaster heads, painted with flesh tones, real human hair collected from the prison barbershop, and placed them in their beds for the nightly head count. They built a raft from over 50 stolen raincoats, stitched together by hand in secret. On the night of June 11th, 1962, they went into the cold black water, into the dark. The morning after the escape, Alcatraz went into full lockdown. The FBI was called. The Coast Guard searched the bay. Helicopters swept the shoreline. They found the raft, partially deflated, floating near Angel Island. They found a paddle. They found a bag with photographs and personal items belonging to the Anglin brothers, which raised an immediate question. Why would you take family photos on a prison escape unless you were planning to disappear forever into a new life? They found no bodies, no blood, no evidence of drowning. The official conclusion was that they drowned, swept out to sea by the currents. Bodies never recovered. But here is what a Dutch team of researchers later confirmed using modern tidal simulation software. On the night of June 11, 1962, if the men launched at the right time, which the evidence suggests they did, the currents would have carried them not out to sea but directly toward the Marin headlands, dry land, safety. They had a window, a real window, and Morris, with his genius-level IQ, had calculated it perfectly. The FBI knew this, and the official story never changed. Now, that letter I promised you. In 2013, 51 years after the escape, the San Francisco Police Department received a handwritten letter. The author claimed to be John Anglin, alive, living in plain sight somewhere in the United States. The letter said that both he and his brother Clarence had survived the escape, that Frank Morris had also survived but died in 2008, that John himself was in poor health and was willing to turn himself in exchange for 1 year in a low-security prison and access to medical treatment. The FBI confirmed the letter was genuine enough to warrant serious investigation. Handwriting analysts examined it. The Anglin family, who had maintained for decades that the brothers were alive, said it was consistent with John's writing style. No deal was made, no arrest, no confirmation. John Anglin, if it was him, simply went silent again, and the case remained open. If Frank Morris was alive until 2008, he would have lived 46 years as a free man. He would have watched the internet be invented. He would have watched 9/11 on television. He would have lived an entire life, somewhere in America, while the FBI had his case file open on a desk. Is that possible? Former U.S. Marshals who have spoken on background say yes, especially in 1962, especially if you were smart enough. And Frank Morris was very, very smart. Here is what we actually know. 3 men escaped from Alcatraz on June 11, 1962. No bodies were ever found. Modern current analysis suggests survival was possible. A letter allegedly from one of them arrived 51 years later. The FBI investigated for 17 years and closed nothing. The U.S. Marshals Service still lists Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers as wanted fugitives to this day, because legally, until there is a body, there is no proof of death. Alcatraz closed the following year, 1963, officially due to cost, but insiders have always noted the timing. An embarrassing escape, an unsolvable case. A prison whose myth of invincibility had been shattered by one genius with a spoon and a raincoat raft. Al Capone was broken by that island. Machine Gun Kelly was broken by it. But Frank Morris? Frank Morris beat it. And nobody, not the FBI, not the Coast Guard, not 60 years of investigation, has ever been able to prove otherwise. Hit subscribe, because next week we're going even deeper into the cases that the government couldn't solve and couldn't explain. Drop a comment below. What do you think happened? Did they drown in the bay? Did they make it to shore? Is it possible Frank Morris really lived until 2008 as a free man? I read every single comment. The rock couldn't hold them. And the truth? The truth is still out there.